Republican Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona joins me now, House Oversight and Judiciary Committee member, also co-chair of the Border Security Caucus. Andy, great to see you as always.
Thanks, Julie. Good to be with you.
Let's just talk about these charges, because you just heard, Karine talk about from the pulpit at the White House, asked if the president had any dealings whatsoever with Hunter's dealings. And she said 5 different times, no evidence, no evidence. But this impeachment inquiry, of course, should allow the House to finally acquire these long sought records, of Hunter, James, and Joe Biden, as well as to pursue witnesses involved in their dealings. Let's talk about the so-called evidence that she says does not exist.
Well, let's think about this. We've got suspicious activity reports and bank records that just give us a chain of money transfers. We've got the shell corporations that they're running money through. We have the people receiving the money. And then we have some very specific situations. You've got Hunter Biden and his partner, Devon Archer. Devon Archer's already testified. He said their product was Joe Biden. That's what they were selling. And they're on the Burisma board. They make some calls because Burisma's concerned. And guess what? Yeah. Joe Biden admits that he used that as extortion. So there's all kinds of evidence that links that, whether it's China, Russian oligarchs, they go right hand in hand. Money changes hands, and action by Joe Biden takes place. Yeah. That's what we're talking about.
Devon Archer also traveled with the president and Hunter, which is a little odd. I get your whole bring your kid to work day, but bring your kid to work day and his friend, especially when it involves overseas trips, seems a bit odd. There are bank records of money transferred to President Biden that his team claims were payments for money he loaned to family members. And this is another big question, because in sworn testimony to lawmakers earlier this month, IRS whistleblowers said, and I quote, I don't believe we ever obtained records that would have shown us any light on those transactions. And quote, in all the different scenarios, there was nothing to verify that they were loans in the evidence. And here is one of those whistleblowers, Joseph Ziegler, just yesterday.
That's why Gary and I came forward, was to shine a light on some of the darkest corners of DOJ, that they're not treating taxpayers the same. And that should cause a concern to every single American out there, that we're not treating people the same.
No, we're not treating people the same. Gee, of course not. I mean, the president's son is certainly not being treated the same as a layman would be, or any average citizen, with the accusations and alleged corruption that he's being accused of, had he not been the son of the president.
Right, and Hunter Biden has actually admitted that in television interviews. He has said, look, all of the advantages I've had is because of my last name is Biden. So he admits that. And in the meantime, we have a separate bank official who said on the $5 million Chinese transfer, he said, when I looked at it, he basically sent a memo. Is this a bank loan? They're not selling a product. How is this $5 million coming from the Bank of China, this transaction? How is this even originating? It looks suspicious. And there was no bank loan. There was no loan here. Joe Biden didn't have the wherewithal to make loans to Jim and Sarah Biden. It's just when I hear there's no evidence, that is their only defense. Right. Oh, we don't have evidence. But there is a mountain of evidence, and our problem is sifting through it, making sure it's easy for the American people to understand.
Yeah, there are 4 potential articles of impeachment here, speaking of evidence. You've got bribery, conspiracy, obstruction, and abuse of power. Bribery, I want to talk about that, by the way, is the second impeachable act listed under Article 2. The allegation the president actually received a bribe worth millions was actually documented on an FD 1023 form by a trusted FBI source who was paid a significant amount of money by the government. How do you confirm this? And if confirmed, because this is yet to be confirmed, how do you see this play out?
Well, there's 2 ways to confirm it. We could get to the actual informant, but we don't know who that informant is. We suspect we know, but that informant is in hiding, right? Because now they've got some, they're a target. The second thing would be if the FBI would disclose honestly who the informant is and whether they trusted that document and what they did to verify that document. And they haven't done that. But what we do know is for years, they paid this informant big dollars, and they trusted that informant on multiple occasions and found that that informant was one of veracity. He told the truth often enough that they relied on him. The third way I guess you could do is get the former Burisma CEO, who is in hiding in the Mediterranean, we're told. I volunteered to go over and find the guy, but the reality is that's what's happened here. These people have actually been disappeared, whether it's in China, Patrick Ho and others, some have been disappeared. That's what's happened here as well.
Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you so much for talking to us. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.